to our discussion of the horses coming out of the Derby, gentlemen, and let's segue to a fuller discussion of Classic Empire. Appeared to be against the grain of the racetrack, had the trouble at the start that we discussed, also had a little bit of trouble finding a little bit of difficulty getting a run as they turned for home as well. Is this horse, Andy Serling, a trip horse that you're interested in playing back, or are you concerned that maybe there's been a little too much attention paid to this trip at this point?
Yeah, I think that he on paper he rates to be a player in this race, but there's two schools of thoughts with him, Pete. One is, well, he ran a Breeders'. If he runs back to his Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he will win this race, in my opinion. That was an effort. That was a sensational effort. I believe it was a better effort than any horse in this race has ever run. He did all the dirty work, and he ran a fast race. He held a very good horse, and not this time. But the Classic Empire of 2017 is a very different horse. If you like him, you're not only saying, I think he was badly compromised in the Derby. He could have been very close. If he had as good a trip as Always Dreaming, he might have even won. He's going to be the second choice at 3-1 or 5-2. I would rather bet him, and I don't have a problem with that. However, you also may be saying, he ran badly in his first race at Gulfstream. He had issues, he missed training, et cetera, et cetera. And now it's his third race of a form cycle, and he's ready to run his best race, coming off trouble, so I really like him. Okay, fine. The problem I have is that he still has never run a race that's even close to the Breeders' Cup. So I don't have any evidence that he is nearly the same horse. And his Arkansas Derby, he got an absolutely great setup and was life and death to beat Conquest Mo Money, who will be 5 times his price in the Preakness, and ran a better race. And now he's got to run his third race in 5 weeks in an arduous situation. And I think he's much more likely to not show up in this race than to show up. And while I'm not going to be shocked when he wins, and I'll use him, I don't think he's a great bet in the 5-2, 3-1 range.
Andy Beyer, what about this idea? Is this a case of a horse who hasn't trained on from 2 to 3, or looking at the narrative and the setbacks, can you position this as a horse who's finding his stride and is ready to fire a big shot?
I was very negative on him going into the Kentucky Derby. I mean, the point that I made, on our webinar 2 weeks ago was this horse last year this is the best horse of his generation. He had all kinds of setbacks. I mean, nothing went right for him. It was, minor injuries, training poorly, and they were sort of desperate to get a prep race into him. And in the Arkansas Derby, was sort of the last chance for him. And he got a figure of 94 against a nothing field. So I said, no, he's not back. But, after the Derby, I'm prepared to say that he's on the, he was in fact on the way back. That, in the context of what all the other horses did, the fact that horses on the rail ran 1, 2, 3, 5 in that race, and he started with a little bit of a tough beginning, from post 14, and was wide all the way, and was the one horse who rallied. I got to say, that's a positive effort. So I understand little Andy's negative points. He's unfortunately he's the only horse out of the Derby that you can believe in. I was a little sorry that McCracken wasn't in this race, because I thought that he really made an eye-catching wide move that was a little less obvious than Classic Empire's performance. But I'm with Classic Empire in this race.
Do you feel the 3-1 of the morning line would represent value?
It's not great, but as long as I'm, you're planning to be a bridge jumper against Always Dreaming, I figure out that's the tough stand I'll take.
I think Pete,
well, let me say, if you're Andy and you're really against Always Dreaming, Classic Empire is just fine in the 3-1 range.
Right, because the potential for a score just goes way up when you're looking at a number where without the 4-5 favorite in there.
Right, what Andy's basically saying is, I don't like, Classic Empire should be favored, is essentially what he's saying. And 3-1 in a 10-horse field where there are a number of horses that are very tough to make, it's not really that bad a price.
No, I would concur with that. Let's talk about second place finisher from the Derby, Lookin at Lee. I know where both of you guys are gonna go with this one based on everything we've said so far. But I'll ask the question anyway, Andy Serling. Is this a case of a horse who had a perfect trip and benefited from it, or is he an improving horse with a legitimate shot in this race?
I don't like this horse at all. I've never liked any of his races. I thought he sucked up in fast-paced races in Arkansas. And I'm going to say that not only is he proof positive of the strong rail, I think a very good argument could be made that he may have been the one horse that really benefited from a wet track. I mean, it's a sloppy track. It's badly labeled as a wet fast track in the chart. That was a sloppy track. And I think he both the rail and the slot may have moved him up. And I also don't see this race as a total meltdown of some sort.
Yeah, also there's a real history in the Derby of kind of bum horses plodding up and picking up the deadwood to finish second or third. I mean, Andy, you have a better memory than I. The horse who finished second to California Chrome, that was Commanding Curve, was that,
yeah.
It was never heard
he won
from
2 years
again.
later.
Yeah, and so and to have Lookin at Lee not only be the clunker upper, but also to do it with the benefit of a gold rail. Let's say if I could find a horse for horse bet against against him, I'll take any other